It is January 30th, 2016, and I am in Budapest, Hungary. Angela Merkel recently made an announcement regarding all the migrants that she has ushered into her country by the hundreds of thousands initially, and now basically by the millions. She says that these migrants, some of whom are Syrians, a lot of whom are not, need to return to their home countries once the situation in Syria has been fixed. This is, I suppose, a step forward as far as her policies are concerned, except that it really isn't. It sounds positive in the sense that she seems to be exerting a control over the situation which has been wholly missing during the past few months. But if you look at the bottom of what she's suggesting, I mean, if you look at the entire concept, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, it's just another thing that Angela Merkel, another bone that she's throwing to her unlimited immigration critics in a failed attempt to remedy a situation that she has allowed to get completely out of hand. Because, you know, in the past she has said that multiculturalism has failed and a lot of blah, 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 without any concrete bones to it. Because no matter what she may say, when the rubber meets the road, I don't think a lot of these Africans and Muslims, be they Syrian or of other ethnicities or region of the world, are gonna give a hoot about what Angela Merkel says or her preferences or her speeches or anything of that sort. Because they're already in Germany. And they're not going anywhere. Some of them may leave. A few of them may leave. But to say that most of them may leave is unrealistic, and it flies in the face of the experience of other countries with migrants of this type. These migrants, African and Muslim migrants, they're a tattoo. They're graffiti on the body politic of the German nation. Permanent. They're not going to go away. And perhaps she's somewhat embarrassed about how things have turned out for her. The result of her policies, I mean, there were plenty of voices in the chorus telling Angela Merkel, what you're doing is stupid, the consequences are predictable. And just a few weeks into her politics, into her policies, into the deployment of her policies, what do we have? The Paris attacks, the Cologne sex attacks, which were replicated throughout Europe. And if you think this is just something that's going to happen once a year, I got to tell you, I'm selling you a bridge. Just give me your name, phone number, and I'll give you my wire transfer information, and I'm selling you a bridge, the nearest bridge. Because that's not how things are going to play out. So these migrants they're going to become a permanent aspect of European society unless they get pushed out. And no speech or sweet words or I'm sorry or I didn't think things through or my policies were not sufficiently thorough, but now I'm changing course from Angela Merkel is going to do the trick. Nothing's going to change it because the economic disparities between Germany and other regions of the world are just so big. And add that to the fact that a lot of these Arab guys, I mean, making the beeline into Europe, they seem to have spent their young adulthood not going to school but watching porno flicks over the internet. And so they're making a beeline into Europe to behave in the most outrageous and disgusting fashion. But then again, it's all predictable, you know. And it's not going to go away. And these migrants are not going to go anywhere unless they get shut out of Europe or kicked out. Angela Merkel has made no progress in respect of keeping these people out of Europe. In fact, that goes contrary to her policies. I mean, that is the massive flaw in her policies, that she does not believe in protecting a country's borders. To her, that goes against the sanctity of her ideologies. So the consequences be damned. She does not want fences, and with regards to other countries, all across the Balkan route, they are currently being instructed to whether or not they have a fence in place or a means of keeping these migrants out, to allow migrants to come in instead of creating a bottleneck, and continue into Germany. The result of this policy is 1.1 million people, mostly young guys, coming into Germany last year. And for this year, the situation is going to be very similar. Because these guys, these people, these politicians, these Angela Merkel types, they just, for some reason, they want to either ethnically replace their own population, or they just don't have a grasp of what they're doing, and they do not understand the consequences of their actions and their policies. Now, the situation is very bad because Europe is bound by a social contract. It's a very important social contract, a fundamental social contract. And that social contract says, you as a citizen, you take the back seat. If you have any problems, you take the back seat. You do not engage in acts that may be unlawful if what you're attempting to do is to remedy wrongs that have been committed against you, or wrongs that may have been committed against the people in your community. The women in your community who seem to be taking the brunt of these of the anger of these and frustrations of these sexual and otherwise of these migrants. So you're supposed to take the back seat. But if that social contract is broken, or is perceived to have been broken in a fundamental way, for example, if a country either does not protect its citizens against crime or moral outrages, or fails to protect its borders against people who have a demonstrated tendency towards committing crimes and engaging in acts of disrespect, particularly towards the women and children of that country, then that social contract is broken. If that social contract is broken, then what happens is very unfortunate, because the individuals in that country, the members of that society, have an obligation. And this particularly applies with regards to the males in the country, but it also applies to the females. And that obligation is the obligation to protect your community, to protect your nation. And if the police cannot handle that responsibility for whatsoever reason, whether it be political correctness or any other reason, whether they just have an ideological constipation that does not allow them to see things clearly and respond in a direct fashion to the outrages that are being perpetrated in the open, then the members of those societies, male and female, have an obligation to take matters into their own hands and protect themselves and protect their societies and protect their fellow citizens, irrespective of what the police may say. Because the police will have lost respectability in the eyes of the citizens, and its role as having a monopoly over the deployment of power and the deployment of force and the use of violence, that monopoly will be no more. And what you will have armed militias, and you will have mobs, as has happened recently, just this weekend, in Sweden, in Stockholm, where you had a mob of 200 masked men just saying, forget it, enough. These children in the train stations who are openly groping Swedish women and disrespecting Swedish women. First of all, they're not children, and even if they were children, what they're doing will not be tolerated. And if they are here in this country as aliens to this country, and they're engaging in that behavior, they're enemies of the people in this country, and they will be treated as such. And you also, of course, had the incident in Dover, in the United Kingdom, where mobs of men engaged in a violent assault on so-called quote-unquote refugee demonstrators, and attacked them physically, with the police unable to keep the two groups of demonstrators apart, completely powerless. And that's a type of situation that you end up with if a society cannot rely on its established police force. A society where you end up with situations such as what we saw in Cologne, where over 500 women were just sexually assaulted, or where a 72-year-old Austrian woman can be raped by a migrant, and the migrant only serves a sentence of 20 months and is not even deported. It's a situation where the society has lost control, and citizens need to take matters into their own hand, and that's not where we want to be. Let me be clear, that is not where we want to be. Take care, guys.